What is up, guys? Welcome in to yet another edition of the Ben Garcia Show, a special Saturday edition of the Ben Garcia Show. We're talking all things Arizona Cardinals as we go in to the Big Easy, a place where I met my guest, actually more times than I've met my Cardinals squad show guest, which is actually really interesting. But before we get there, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, follow me on all social media platforms. And appreciate you guys tuning in and making the Ben Garcia Show what it is, which is a ton of fun to be able to come up on here and talk all things Arizona sports. My next guest sitting to, what is this, the right of me? My guy, Ross Jackson. You know, I've been circling this game because I'm like, there's not many weeks where I'm going to get, you're not going to say this because you're too nice of a guy, but I was like, there's not many weeks where I think I'm going to get the number one best beat reporter of the opposing team on this show. He's not going to say that. He 100% is. I mean, I was in, like, quick story. I was in New Orleans. This is where I met Ross, where I, again, have met him more times once than I have met Clancy and Jameel Douglas on the Cardinals squad show, which is actually insane. Ross, I'm over there. I'm busy I'm trying to find the next thing, being busy, getting to the next thing. People are coming over and be like, tapping Ross on the shoulder. Guys who I'm like, you're just friends with Trevor Sycamore, who comes in and just says, what's up? Cam Jordan just walked by and just said hello to you, or you guys just go hang out. So my guy, Ross Jackson of the Locked On Saints podcast. What's up, man? How are you?
Oh, man, I'm great. Glad to be here with you. It's crazy to me that you, Clancy, and Jamil haven't met each other in person because the chemistry y'all have is incredible. It's awesome. And so I'm actually shocked. I'm actually shocked to hear that y'all haven't met in person before.
We have never met in person. They've actually made plans. They didn't know that I was in the other room with my headphones in. This will tell you how good our chemistry actually is, which might be not great. But I was in the other room, and we're about to record. My wife's pregnant. I was just checking in on her, making sure she's okay. Walking into the other room, my headphones are still in, and they're making plans to hang out without me, and they don't know that I can't hear it. And so I didn't say anything until the end of that Cardinals squad show. And I said, I went into the end of it and I said, by the way, these two guys thought it'd be a good idea to plan to hang out without me. And it was just funny. It was all, I live awesome. Way further away from they do, but it was a really funny incident. Or at least that's what awesome. I'm going to tell myself. But,
either way, right. Yeah. This was really funny. I really enjoyed this. This was awesome.
I'm going to take it as a joke. And we'll see how it goes from there. Either way, man, let's start here. First off, again, New Orleans is such a historic, cool town. I don't know if you've ever been to Phoenix or Glendale where the Cardinals play. Night and day difference between the two cities. Places. I was in a severe culture shock. So with that being said, here's where I want to start. I'm curious, and I said this to you pre-show, what other teams feel about the Cardinals? Because if I'm telling you what the consensus is, I feel like I'm the one being the most rational, maybe not with my prediction, but with this game, the Cardinals are 6.5-point favorites. I think that is a lot of points to go on the road for a team that wasn't a playoff team last year to cover that. So I think I'd take the Saints to cover this game, but ultimately, most Cardinals fans are the Cardinals better dominate this game. The Saints suck. We're going to dominate them. Kyler's going to look good. They're going to run the ball well. The defense is going to make Spencer Rattler look what he looked like last year, which was a second, third string quarterback. The Cardinals are coming in to New Orleans. Is there any fear of this team? And please be honest. Don't sugarcoat for these, for this fan base.
Yeah, I would certainly say so. I think that this New Orleans Saints team very much respects the opponent that's coming in the Arizona Cardinals. And in fact, I think the New Orleans Saints should look at the Arizona Cardinals as a goal of where to be in a couple of years from now. Like, I think that when you look at the way that Arizona has rebuilt, has kind of, committed around its quarterback, committed to its vision, committed to its head coach and Jonathan Gannon and the way that they're going to go about it. Gannon's trust in his staff, I think, is big too, like handing over play calling, allowing play calling duties to go to Rallis and all this stuff. Like, all of that was the right decisions. And I think that those are the kinds of things that the New Orleans Saints should be looking at as they kind of get into what I would consider now the beginning of the upswing, right? We kind of go through the cyclical nature with every team in the NFL to eventually they're on top to swinging down to swinging up. I think Arizona is on that upper left quadrant of the circle as they try to bring themselves back up, while the Saints are on that bottom left trying to swing up to where Arizona is. And so I think Arizona is a really good kind of example or even model for New Orleans to be looking at and sort of hoping that they'll be where Arizona is coming into week one as they look ahead to their future in the next couple of years.
So you would probably stand or side with the majority of Cardinals fans that feel like they should just come in and win this game. I'm curious to how, I mean, you're at every practice, you're at every press conference. I mean, Cam Jordan's dapping you up in the middle of the Super Bowl media row. Like you're dialed in. How do you perceive the New Orleans Saints this year? Because, like, again, if I'm being honest, I think they're terrible. I think starting Spencer Rattler, I mean, we can get into how he won that battle in a second, maybe after this, but I see this team, Trevor Penning, I mean, he's out, but was he ever really great? Demario Davis is 36 years old. Cam Jordan, how the heck he's still playing at a high level is beyond me. It feels like they're still paying their dues from kicking the can down the road from Drew Brees. I do think that they're going to be a competitive team in week one, because I always tell people 0-0, it doesn't matter what team you have. Every grown man that plays a professional sport will convince themselves if we just scratch, claw, and try really, really hard, we can get to the playoffs, and then who knows what happens. Or does everyone kind of know this team is in a massive rebuilding year?
I think it's both. I think this team knows that they're in a rebuilding year, and I think everybody knows that they're in a rebuilding year, but they're still a team that's going to go out there and be competitive. Like, if they can go out there and win 5 games with Dennis Allen as their head coach and Derek Carr as their quarterback, then Kellen Moore has got to account for something. You know what I mean? In terms of hope, belief, whatever it might be. Brandon Staley, a guy coming in that obviously has been friends with Jonathan Gannon for, I think they played basketball together in like the 4th grade or something like that. Like, they've known each other forever. And this guy's going to be leading their defense. Like, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff that's coming from that. For all the shortcomings that maybe Brandon Staley had when it came to game management, when it came to being the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, there's no doubt that he's a good defensive mind. And so I think that there's confidence there. And I think this is a team that intends to compete while also rebuilding. They're not going to be a team that's going to give up. And so while I think Arizona will win this game, I'll tell you that outright, I do think that the Saints probably cover, just because they have the ability to be able to hang, stay close, and they have a really, really good special teams kind of game plan going into these games, and a really, really good focus on hidden yardage, which is going to get them in field goal range a lot. And when I mention field goal range, I mean you might see 1 touchdown and 4 field goals by this team on Sunday, because I've got them predicted to score 19 points. And so I think that even with that, you have the ability to be able to kind of keep things close and keep things positive in terms of your trajectory as a team as a whole, even if it's not going to be represented on the win-loss column for New Orleans. And I don't think that's going to be represented in the win-loss column for New Orleans. I have this team maybe winning 5 games here in 2025, but I also think that the win-loss column in this instance for New Orleans, who is a rebuilding team, as you asked, that's an okay mark for them. That's a fine mark for them as they move forward, because it's going to be more about laying the foundation over the course of this season for what success they're going to try to capture in the future. That's why I look at Arizona, I look at Detroit. Those are teams that kind of went the slow rebuild. Washington got it all in 1 year. That was great for them. Houston looked like they might have had it all in 1 year. That was great for them until it wasn't. And so we know how this sort of lifespan goes across the league, and the Saints are just kind of following their way in.
How in the world, I'm just going to ask this plainly. How in the world did Spencer Rattler win this quarterback job? Like, on the Cardinals Squad show with, Locked On Podcast Network, we both work for, I was making jokes about Tyler Shuck. I was like, that's who they're going to have week 1. We all just unanimously agreed about a month ago, whenever they decided this is going to be Tyler Shuck's team. Is Spencer Rattler just about to have some sort of a renaissance, or is Kellen Moore see something in him to where it's maybe like last year he was really bad, but he sees an average quarterback in him, or maybe even better than that, and he's going to coach it out of him? Or you watch the quarterback competitions, it's actually pretty easy to tell which guy's better than the other. I've done it last year on the sidelines for the Cardinals, watching Clayton Tune and Desmond Ridder, when we were like, these guys suck. How did Spencer Rattler win this starting job? How did we get here?
Yeah, he was the better quarterback. I mean, I've seen, every single throw that those two quarterbacks threw over the course of the offseason in open, in practices that were open to the media. saw every single one of them. And Spencer Rattler was the better quarterback. That's not to say that Tyler Shough was bad, but Tyler Shough is a rookie coming in. And had he started here in 2025, he would have only been the 8th second-round quarterback since 1950 to start week 1 of their rookie season. It would have been the outlier for Tyler Shough to be the week 1 starter. That being said, I thought Tyler Shough was going to be the week 1 starter because he's the highest drafted quarterback in New Orleans since 1971 when Archie Manning was drafted in the first round. And if you want to add the supplemental draft, then I guess we can say Dave Wilson in the 1980s. But still the highest drafted quarterback in several decades for the New Orleans Saints. And so I figured that it would be Tyler Shough, but Spencer Rattler was simply the better quarterback. His processing speed picked up big time, which was a big issue for him last year in terms of welcoming sacks, things like that, not welcoming them, but that led to a lot of sacks. His mobility is a lot better. He's moving a lot quicker. He's a lot more decisive and he's a lot more aggressive. And I think all of those things made him the better quarterback during training camp in that environment. How things work once you get into actual, real, regular season, game 1 live bullets, that's going to be different. That's what we're going to have to see. I think we're going to see both of those quarterbacks at some point here in 2025, but Spencer Rattler earned absolutely the opportunity to be the week 1 starter. And now he's one of 16 black quarterbacks to start in the NFL, which is an NFL record. And he gets the opportunity to be able to kind of share in that history, which I think is pretty dope.
2 black quarterbacks sharing the field on Sunday between him and Kyler. So that's interesting that you just said that you think they're both going to play. So that doesn't tell me that you think Spencer Rattler is going to have a career, because if he does, like let's say he's Sam Darnold of last year and he throws, I don't know how many, I think it's like 35 touchdowns. He looks awesome. He just gets a new coach that coaches all the good things in him, going from a defensive guy in Dennis Allen to now an offensive guy in Kellen Moore. But it seems like you're still, Spencer Rattler is what he is. He's not going to get that much better. And this is still Tyler Shough's team in week 6, week 7, or I don't know, when the schedule gets a little bit easier.
I think really more so what it is that I'm not an expectation guy. I am a see how things work person when it comes to my analysis and things like that. And so for me right now, what I look at is what's the Occam's razor? What's the most likely outcome? And the most likely outcome, just based upon what we see around the NFL in situations like this, is that eventually the Saints are going to want to see what they have in Tyler Shough unless Spencer Rattler forces them not to be interested. And so if he has that Sam Darnold year, then obviously that changes everything. And then Spencer Rattler is your 17-game starter. And with that kind of year, if he were to have that kind of Sam Darnold year, which would be, kind of a big surprise, not just because of Spencer Rattler, but because you have, Kellen Moore as an offensive play caller who's excellent, but having to do it for the first time as a head coach, which means a split focus, brand new offense, brand new defense, and then a team that struggles to stay healthy. There's a lot of factors into why that might not be the case. But for me, looking at it from sort of the pragmatic side of all this, the Saints should figure out, unless Spencer Rattler convinces them otherwise, what they have in both of these quarterbacks before they go into what's expected to be, as we discussed this ahead of week 1 of the NFL season, a very good quarterback class in 2026's NFL draft. And we have to acknowledge that just because the Saints spent a 2nd-round pick on one guy and they spent a 5th-round pick on another guy that they've chosen to be their starter. And by the way, the year before that, they picked a 4th-round guy, traded up for a 4th-round guy in Jake Haener, that just because these guys are in the building now doesn't mean that they will be the only options in 2026. And so it's up to them to prove to the Saints that they don't need to go to that quarterback class, but in order for them to really be able to do that, the Saints have to see what they get in both of those guys. So I look at the bye week at week 11 as a potential dividing factor for when Tyler Shough could see the season. But if Spencer Rattler performs well enough, then that door is never going to open.
Listen, I will say this. If that door doesn't open, there's a guy in our backyard in Sam Levitt who is freaking awesome, man. I mean, listen, if I'm in the realm right now, and we'll talk about Kyler in just a second here, that if Kyler doesn't work out this year, the Cardinals should definitely be in the realm for a quarterback. I mean, hell, that dude he was ranked behind Arch Manning. And I was telling everyone, I was like, can he play a game first before we list him ahead of Sam Levitt? And then I said to myself, listen, the deeper he's buried, the more likely of a chance that he could be here in Arizona. But I mean, just an awesome player. Also, I think it's hilarious that you guys drafted Archie Manning, and you guys still might have the best Arch Manning drafted into the NFL. It just off of 1 week of what we saw Arch last week. I think that's hilarious. Switching the conversation over to Kyler. He is the most polarizing player in Arizona. Out of all the sports, it's not close. You are either pro Kyler or you're anti Kyler, or you're me and the only person in the middle that's saying, I think this team can go really far this year if Kyler just tones down on the late season turnovers. But I like the jokes are the same thing here. I'm just curious if it's everyone in New Orleans or just some. It's, he's too short. Of course, he's 5'10", so he's probably taller than most of the guys that are making that joke. Which I always find is funny. I'm like, he's not,
of course,
short. He's football short.
He's relatively short. Yeah.
Like I'm short. I'm 5'8", 5'7", whatever. Kyler's 5'10". I'd be tough for me to call him short, but either way,
right.
How is Kyler perceived in New Orleans? Is everyone just kind of like, all right, like if we're using the Mike Sando quarterback rankings, who I had on this show a couple of weeks ago, oh, here comes that tier 2 guy, or is it like, we can beat Kyler?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's respected quite a bit as an opponent. He's certainly looked at as a threat. I think that one of the big reasons why is that Saints fans have watched New Orleans struggle against mobile quarterbacks for years and years and years and years. This was always one of Dennis Allen's big downfalls, who was the defensive coordinator here in New Orleans from 2015 on until he became the head coach. And then he was the head coach over the course of the past couple of years. But for New Orleans, I think what they look at is Kyler Murray does the thing well that the New Orleans Saints struggle against and struggle to stop, right? And so I think that becomes a big part of it. So a lot of the respect around Kyler Murray is what he can do with his legs. But I think you hear a lot of people here talk about, like, he's also a much better passer than he's often given credit for. And he's a much better thrower of the football than he's often given credit for. And so I think both of those things kind of bridge. I think there's a true respect here for Kyler Murray as a threat. And I think that's just part of having kind of when he is not the catalyst for your favorite team winning and losing, you're looking at it just through a different lens. And I think that different lens is allowing a lot of Saints fans to kind of look at Kyler Murray and say, okay, what is it that he does on the field? And how does that measure up to what their favorite team struggles with? And I think that that's maybe where the respect for Kyler Murray comes through, is sort of that more objective standpoint of, hey, he does some things very well that the Saints have struggled to stop in the future. And so he's going to be a really good litmus test and barometer for where this team's defense is under Staley versus where it was under Dennis Allen.
Brandon Staley, a fun former NFC West foe who people will continue to tell me is an amazing defensive coordinator, and he might be, but we never looked at him. We always looked at Sean McVay at just owning the Arizona Cardinals up until recently, where they finally beat him in the first part of the season. And it wasn't something that immediately you were worried about later on in the season. So Brandon Staley will be fun to see him. Ross Jackson of the Locked On Saints podcast. Let's kind of turn it over to the keys to the game or whatever, right? Yeah. I didn't just came in here talking narratives. I actually did 4 seconds of research like you're supposed to do. Last year the Saints were second worst in rushing yards allowed per game, 141. The Cardinals, for all the things that Drew Petzing gets in trouble for, has always been a really good rushing offense under Drew Petzing. Even with Josh Dobbs at quarterback, they were really good. Last year, the Cardinals were 7th in rushing yards per game at 144 yards a game last year. Have the Saints done anything to plug up the holes up front? Or is this Cardinals team, I know we haven't talked about Marvin or Trey, because I don't think if Jonathan Gannon and Drew Petzing are smart, and I think they are, Drew Petzing, there's a little bit of a argument there for some people. I don't think so. I think he's a bright offensive mind, especially running the ball. If they come into this game, they're going to pound the rock, and hopefully on Wednesday, I'm talking about Kyler throwing for 120 yards, maybe a touchdown, no interceptions, but him having 80 rushing yards, James Conner and Trey Benson having a day, because Kyler has continuously talked about this year wanting to use his legs more. And I've continuously used the DeAndre Ayton sports comparison. Don't show me, tell me, because you've been telling me this for a couple of years.
Sure.
Is this the same thing that you're looking at for the Saints? I know they've got new corners. Paulson Adebo's not there anymore. Cam Jordan is still there. Demario Davis is still there. But is this the major thing you're looking at, that they could just gash the Saints and never give them the ball back and turn the Superdome, the Caesar Superdome, almost called it Mercedes-Benz Superdome, the
I
Caesar
know, it happens to me all the
Superdome.
time.
Yeah, the Caesar Superdome into a little bit quieter because their team never has the ball.
Yeah, that's 100% the top thing that I'll be watching during this game when the Saints are on defense. Like you mentioned, they were 31st in the NFL last year in terms of rushing yards allowed, both per game and in total. And then beyond that too, I also look at the explosive plays that they gave up in the run game, and they gave up quite a few. Meanwhile, Arizona last year was top 5 in 20+ yard rushes generated. With 17, 6 of those came from Kyler Murray, by the way. And then they were tied in the NFL at number 1 for the most 40-yard rushing plays generated with 7. They were tied with 2 of the best rushing offenses in the NFL, Baltimore and Philadelphia. So when we were talking about Arizona, we're talking about them as a rushing team that is in that class a player, and they've only gotten better. And I think that it's more than just James Conner, although I do think James Conner is an absolute threat. Brandon Staley told me the other day that James Conner is one of the most underrated running backs in football. So there's an absolute respect for him. But I think Trey Benson's a threat as well, coming in there and being somebody that can spell him. And then, of course, the Kyler Murray factor. And so what New Orleans has done in an attempt to improve or begin their improvements for the run game, because I don't think it can all happen in 1 year. This is a multi-year process. They traded for Devon Godshaw, who's a fantastic run stopper in the middle, and they shifted their defense to what I'll call a little bit more of a 3-4 defense. Nobody ever plays specifically 3-4 or 4-3 anymore. You're a multiple defense, but the Saints in their base will rely on 3 down linemen on their interior, as well as 2 stand-up pass rushers. That won't include Chase Young going into this game. So not only does that impact the pass rush, that impacts the run game as well. And so those are the things that they've done in terms of trying to make sure that they are standing up to the run game, trying to create more one-on-one matchups over on the offensive line and defensive line and in the trenches, so that the linebackers will be able to fire some gaps and try to get involved in the run game a little bit more, including also that star position, which would be Alontae Taylor, which is kind of Brandon Staley, the Fangio version of the slot corner, which is going to be a very active position. So I think they've done a combination of all of those things in an attempt to begin their improvements. But this will be their first real test about whether or not those improvements are immediately impactful or just kind of begin their trajectory for bettering themselves in that area of the game for their future.
So let's switch it over to the Saints side then, as we close it out here just a second here, because I don't want to. You got things you got to do. I'm not going to keep you here for an hour. That's nuts.
I could talk to you all day, my friend. In fact, we have talked all day.
we have done. Yes, we've spent a whole week together. By the end of it, you were ready for me to go home. You're like, get this kid out of here.
No.
Listen, man, you're just saying that because the camera's rolling. So the Saints, I have a hypothesis on what I think the Saints are going to do to come out here and try to upset the Cardinals, because that's what the line is. But I want to know if this is the same thing. The Cardinals have so much youth at the defensive back position. Garrett Williams, who is a really good slot corner, probably one of the better slot corners in the NFL, is still in his 3rd year. Will Johnson, who everyone is crowned the next Jalen Ramsey, and I've said, all right, just pump the brakes. Can we let the guy play 6 games first before we? And I think he's going to be great. But cornerback is a hard transition in the NFL, because you go from guarding guys at State Farm University to now each week. Chris Olave is not a bad one. He's pretty good. When he's up and right and healthy. He's a 1st-year corner, and then Max Melton's a 2nd-year corner. Those guys are all starting in this game. I think, even though I don't think Spencer Rattler is very good, they're going to test those corners ad nauseum, because the Cardinals have done a lot to shore up this defensive front. I don't know if you're going to be able to run 40-year-old Alvin Kamara 40 yards in the A's and B gaps. What do you think the Saints are going to do?
Yeah, look, I think that the passing game is going to be a big part of what it is the Saints do. I do think that they will try to control the game on the ground. They now finally have a complement to Alvin Kamara, to where they can use Alvin Kamara out a little bit more in space and utilize him more efficiently, as opposed to the past few years where you've seen him run those A or B gaps and carrying the ball more than 200 times in a season and all those other pieces. And so if they can get that backfield going in terms of sharing the responsibilities, complementing a little bit, creating some dynamicism there, then I think that will go a long way for them. But I think that the thing that makes a big difference for New Orleans, who, by the way, also young wide receivers, right? Yeah, Chris Olave going into his 4th year, Rashid Shaheed going into just his 2nd contract. You've got guys like, Devon Vele, who was traded for this offseason, that's only going into his 2nd year. And then, but then you also have a guy like Brandon Cooks, who's going into his 11th, 12th year and everything like that. So you'll have kind of this interesting blend of like young guys like Mason Tipton going into his 2nd year, but then, one really good veteran presence that can help you out and help those guys kind of have an impact. So, but I think that the thing that they're going to do a lot is try to create mismatches when it comes to those pass catchers, because all of those guys can line up outside on either side of the ball and in the slot on either side of the ball. And even some players like Rashid Shaheed, you could see taking some snaps out of the backfield as well, just to run routes from out of the backfield, probably not getting a carry there unless it's some kind of outside sweep or something like that. But for New Orleans, I do think that a good bit of what they're going to be trying to do with those wide receivers is working on creating some mismatches and trying to stress those young corners. Now, there's a really, really good safety in Arizona by the name of Budda Baker that can foil all of that from the very beginning, because he can help these guys in terms of communication. Here's what to watch for, all those other things, and then also go out there and make plays on the football. Not only is he a dynamic playmaker, he's one of the best communicators in the game at the position, which I think is really important. Saints just went to go and get a guy to help them out with something like that as well, and Justin Reed. But I think that's where this quarterback cornerback matchup really comes to fruition and really kind of gets its success or failure, is going to be with the versatility of the wide receivers and how they could stress those young corners by making them play different assignments, moving them around, lining up across different guys, all this other stuff all throughout the game.
This is the last question I'll ask you, because it probably should have been asked earlier, but listen, Saturday morning, things happen. Sometimes things just go off the rocker a little bit. I'm just curious, because Cliff Kingsbury, and I won't, Kyler holds a lot of blame for some of the issues that he has for Kyler. And I won't shy from that. It's a real make it or break it year for Kyler. We're going to know by Thanksgiving if he's the dude. Sure. But Cliff Kingsbury is a bona fide idiot. Like, he's a really bad head coach. I was at the training camps. They called it Camp Cliff. He would have phone breaks and snack breaks. He was I don't think you can have a beta of a head coach like Cliff Kingsbury was. He was not a leader of men. And then he goes to, Washington, and maybe he's a really good offensive coordinator. I don't know. Maybe like Brandon Staley. Maybe he's just a really good defensive coordinator. Jonathan Gannon comes in, breath of fresh. It's literally everything different from Cliff. It might not work out. They haven't made the playoffs yet, but at least we feel like we have a leader. With Kellen Moore, is it a breath of fresh year going from Dennis Allen, a defensive guy? I'm pretty sure he took over for Sean Payton in that instance. So Dennis Allen comes in, defensive guy. It's kind of different, and Kellen Moore, an offensive guy. Is the early returns are they, oh my God, we have an offensive wizard, Kevin O'Connell style? Or is it, this guy can at least just lead? Because he's kind of had an up and down career. He was with Dallas. He was kind of shown the door there. And then he goes to the Eagles. They kind of figure it out. They win a Super Bowl. Granted, people sometimes give Saquon Barkley a lot of that praise, and how could you not? What do you feel like you have? Like on Sunday, this coaching matchup, is your expectation, Kellen Moore's just going to scheme the hell out of Jonathan Gannon's defense, even if they might lose because the talent deficiency is just there?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big part of it. I mean, Kellen Moore is a really, really brilliant offensive mind. This is a guy that's, taking things from successful days in Dallas, successful days in Philly. I'm not going to call them successful. I'm just going to say days in Los Angeles when he was with the Chargers, and then trying to blend all that together with things that maybe work here in New Orleans as it were. And then, whatever else he wants to blend in. We're talking about a guy who was the winningest quarterback in college football history during his time at Boise State, probably bringing things over from that too. Like, he's going to bring things from every level of the game. You can kind of see that in the coaching staff, reflected in the coaching staff too. You got a lot of guys that were NFL coaches, head coaches, coordinators, position coaches, but you got a lot of guys from college, the college ranks as well. And so they're looking at how they can kind of continue to advance things. And so I do think that a lot of it is Kellen Moore looking to advance the game, advance innovation, and then do it. But we got to remember that innovation isn't always about doing something wildly new. Innovation sometimes is just finding intriguing and different ways to do things that are tried and true rather than, I didn't mean to rhyme, but I'm glad that it did. And so for Kellen Moore, I think the biggest thing with him is that he's shown that he can lead, and he does it genuinely. Like I spoke to a coach that told me that one of their favorite things about Kellen Moore is that he doesn't walk in and just like pull up a picture of Muhammad Ali and talk about how they're going to be Muhammad Ali, or pull up a picture of, something from Star Wars and try to connect it to, what the Saints are going to be or whatever. Like, he's not doing any of that disingenuous crap. He's walking in instead and saying, like, here's who we are, here's who we want to be, here's how we win. And he's kind of putting that to the players, because his focus, he doesn't run, a West Coast scheme or an Air Coryell scheme or whatever. He runs what works for his players. And I think that is one of those things that works super well for players, is that they respond to that because they feel they're being put in the best position to win football games and to be able to do what it is that they do well. Will it translate? Will it actually work? It's going to be up and down throughout a first season, I would imagine. But I think that Kellen Moore has been both a breath of fresh air and a different style of leadership from Dennis Allen, where Dennis Allen it never really felt like he had a full grasp on the leadership access for this team. Kellen Moore certainly feels like he's had that he's earned the respect and trust of the team. I'm just curious, Ben, what it's going to be like when they lose football games, and how he ends up showing up for that. That's always going to be the big test, right? What happens when you're in a 4-game losing streak? How do you respond to that? How do you keep everybody locked in? How do you keep everybody engaged? It's not hard, because this New Orleans Saints locker room is very tight and very together. Even in pivotal years over the course of last year where they had some abysmal performances, the locker room was together. But I don't know if the locker room and the coach were necessarily in sync in the most recent season. I think that the Saints are going to be able to kind of keep that together, but I'm very, very intrigued to see what Kellen Moore is going to be like when the team starts losing games, and how he's able to kind of keep everybody together there.
Kellen Moore is really polarizing, man, because he was kind of doing this, and then he was kind of shown the door in Dallas, and then he went to the Eagles and he won a Super Bowl. I don't know if he's going to be awesome. I will always have a soft spot for Kellen Moore, though, because I guarantee you half my listenership, maybe a quarter of it, if I'm being conservative, don't remember Kellen Moore, the Boise State quarterback, who was bad freaking A, dude. That dude was awesome. There are people that don't even know that he was one of the best college quarterbacks that we had seen for a 5-year period, winningest guy, was in our backyard all the time, winning the Super Bowls. So I'll always have a soft spot for Kellen Moore. I hope it does work out for him. But with that being said, Ross Jackson, the Locked On Saints podcast, myself, Benjamin Garcia, thank you everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Ross, thank you so much for joining us on this Saturday morning, and best of luck this season, man. I've got a soft spot for the Saints team, Kellen Moore, and I just like you. You're a really good dude. I don't want you covering a bad football team.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Right back at you. And for everybody that's checking out this show, man, I got to tell you, like, Ben is somebody that I have a ton of respect for. Like, I'm going to gas you up for a second. I've watched this dude grind. I've watched this dude work harder than a lot of people that I see at the highest levels of this media landscape and everything like that. I'm super, super, super excited for all of you that Ben's here doing this kind of coverage. I'm excited that he's a part of our network as well. And Ben, I'm grateful that you took the time to have me on the show today. Thanks for welcoming me in.
Yeah, we're cutting that part out. No, I appreciate it, man. It's because this is the thing. I'm trying to do that, and you've seen it, right? I do think I work hard, but that's because I think I'm talented, but I don't think I'm the most talented. So what am I going to do? I think in order for me to work, I got to outwork everyone else, Tom Brady style. And hopefully that works out. If it doesn't, at least I can lay my head down at the end of the day and know I did as much as I could. But I mean, you're gassing me up, man. I've been super excited for week 1. I never had a worry in the world that you weren't going to come on here. You're just a busy dude. So as two guys just gassing each other up, I'm excited, man. And I don't know if I ever told you this either, but when I reached out to you, I was like scared to reach out to you because I was like, this guy's the head of the NFL channel. And he's just a dude. He's actually one of the coolest dudes I've ever met. And like I said, I'm not joking. We're at Radio Row. Cam Jordan's just dapping him up. And I'm like, hey, do you want to go talk to Cam Jordan? He's like, we'll talk later. He's like, me and Cam will talk later. They're on just a first name basis. People are coming up and be like, where's Ross? And I'm like, okay, cool. Ross Jackson's just I guess I probably should have been a little bit cooler when I met him. But anyways, man, I do owe, you don't think this, but you do owe I owe a lot of success to you and credit for that. So appreciate it, man. And I'm excited. Have a good season, brother. And hopefully we'll have you on again in the playoffs in the NFC Conference Championship game.
There you go. That would be a lot of fun. Appreciate you, homie.
All right, man. Thank you. Take care.